So as people continue to roll in, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight again, and want to jump into all the good stuff that we have to share with you. This will be recorded and we'll have it on the YouTube channel later as well. So if you have a friend who couldn't make it, please feel free to share this with them. But welcome to the Small Town and Rural Students College Network. For some of you, you may have tuned into some of our webinars before. For some of you, you might be new. Welcome to everyone regardless. So the Small Town and Rural Students College Network, or STARS, as we like to call it, is a consortium of 32 colleges and universities across the United States that are all a little bit different. Some are big, some are small, some are public, some are private, all known for different things, and really meant to kind of show you as students the breadth of what is available to you in higher education. So we want you to have the most information that you possibly can to make an informed decision at the end of the day as to what you want to do when it comes to college or your next step after high school, whatever that looks like. We do a series of different webinars. We do about one every month, but we also visit high schools and other in your community, hopefully. We also do fly-in programs and summer programs and drive-in programs. So we offer a really wide variety of different programming, specifically with the rural and small town student in mind. So that's something that we are dedicated to, helping rural and small town students understand the options that are available to them and support them in the college application process. That's a little bit about us as a group. Then I want us to jump into a little bit about us as people. I'll kick us off and I'll turn it over to Melissa, but my name is Marjorie Bentley. I am a Deputy Director of Admissions at the University of Chicago, and the Executive Director of the STARS College Network. I'm originally from a fairly small town in North Georgia and went to Chicago for undergrad and grad school. So I did fall in love with this big city, much to my mother's horror, and I stayed and I never left, and I still love it. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa now.
Thank you, Margie. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Rodriguez. I use she, her, aya pronouns, and I'm an admissions counselor with the California Institute of Technology, otherwise known as Caltech, located in Pasadena, California. I've been a part of STARS for the past few years. I've been at Caltech for 3 years now, and I'm really, really excited to be a part of this work. So happy to be here, and I'll hand things off to Will.
Hi, everyone. My name is Will Cummins. I'm an Associate Dean of Admission at Amherst College, which is a small liberal arts college in the town of Amherst, Massachusetts, in the western part of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This is my 10th year there. I'm excited to be with you all tonight, especially so because I am also from a small town in Iowa originally, and I'll pass it on to Sergio.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sergio Ceja. I'm an Assistant Director for specialized recruitment at the University of Alabama. I've been with Alabama for about 5 years now, and I'm excited to just show you what we have to offer here with STARS. I'm also originally from a small town in Nebraska. So yeah, welcome everyone to tonight.
So I love that. You see something in common. A lot of us are from small towns ourselves. Part of the reason that we, as STARS, exist is that we really think that this information is important. And many of us wish that we had had this information when we were in your shoes back in high school. So we're going to kick it off with my colleague, Will, and we're going to walk through a lot of the details of the application, and then we're going to even show you what an application looks like once it comes to our desk as admissions counselors. So take it away, Will.
Thanks, Margie. So we're going to start, first of all, with the platforms. Or in other words, you might be thinking, okay, I know I'm planning to apply to colleges, but you might not have thought yet, or you might not know yet about the ways in which you can submit an application. So what you see listed first is the common application. This one might already bring to mind ideas in your head of what it is. But the idea is this: the name implies that there is one common application. In other words, you fill out online one application, and then there are lots and lots of colleges and universities that are partner schools, and you can submit that one application to any of a number of colleges and universities that you designate. In other words, you save yourself the time of having to fill out a bunch of individual applications per institution. You fill out one. Perhaps there's some supplemental questions you have to answer for each institution, but you are filling out, in essence, one application only that is then distributed to any of a number of colleges and universities that you choose. The coalition application is quite similar in terms of its model. Again, there's one application that you'll fill out. You can designate schools to which you would like for it to be sent. The platform's a little bit different. What the coalition offers is a little bit different. If you're curious about either one of them, I recommend just doing some research online about either one. The QuestBridge application is completely different in terms of its model. The QuestBridge is a nonprofit organization, and its mission is to provide high-achieving students of limited financial means with educational opportunities. And so QuestBridge has a slightly more involved process where you could actually apply to be a part of what's called the National College Match program. And if you're selected as a finalist, you would have an opportunity to actually rank a series of partner schools who are QuestBridge partners. Again, that process is a little more complex and involved, so it does warrant doing some research on your own. However, the upside of a QuestBridge application could be quite big. Read more about QuestBridge online if this has piqued your interest, or if you think you're the type of person who fits the category that QuestBridge serves. Lastly, there are some institutions that actually do maintain their own applications that are singular to their institution. And so it may be the case that you can't use a common application like you could for the common application or for the coalition application, and instead you would fill out an individual application for that college or university. The point that we're making here with this slide is that it's worth your time to do some research in advance as you think about the schools that you're interested in, to familiarize yourself with which applications they might accept so that you can streamline your process and fill out as many or as few as is necessary given your interests in terms of the application. Once you've thought about which application you might fill out or which applications you might fill out, you'll also want to acquaint yourself with timelines and application rounds. So some of these may be familiar to you. We'll go through them very briefly. Early decision is one possible application round. As the name implies, you see it baked right into the title. This process is a little bit earlier than a standard application process, which means you might be applying in early November, or a deadline might be in early November for an early decision round. How does early decision work? The main idea would be that you apply early, in early November. Typically, you would sign a binding agreement that says, if I am admitted to this institution to which I've applied early decision, I will withdraw any other application I have out if I am admitted to that institution. In other words, the expectation is that you'll only apply early decision to that school, and if admitted, you will enroll at that school too. One upside is that it's an expedited process. Typically, you'll find out in mid-December if you've been admitted. So the application process might be a little bit less drawn out. You might find out your news early. It does require an earlier start to your application, so you will need to think carefully about whether or not you're in a position to apply to one institution only early on during your senior year. Early action is similar in terms of timeline. By that, I mean the deadline by which you need to apply, which might be early November. It's a little bit different from early decision often, not always, but often, in so much as there typically isn't a binding agreement, although there are some schools that have single choice restrictive early action, and they might restrict you from applying to many other schools under an early action plan. You'll have to do your own individual research. Typically, you might find out if you've been admitted in January or February. It would not be binding. You're getting your admission decision early, but you still have perhaps until May 1st to make a final decision as to whether or not you'd want to enroll in the institution. So the upside is that you're getting information earlier on that will give you more time to sort out whether or not you might like to enroll at that institution. Rolling decision or rolling applications are completely different. The deadlines could happen at any time during the year. And typically the benefit is that the earlier you apply under a rolling admission plan, often the sooner you get your decision. So you could get your decision after you've applied under a rolling plan as early as 2 weeks after you've applied. Maybe it'd be 6 or 8 weeks later. That's going to vary institution to institution, but the idea would be the application deadline isn't finite. There are lots of different times over the course of a year that you could apply. Often there's maybe a little bit of positive benefit to applying earlier as opposed to later. And lastly, regular decision, which I think is probably quite common among a lot of colleges and universities. There is no binding agreement. Application deadlines are typically in December or January. You'll typically find out in the early spring. If you've been admitted, you'll have until late spring, which would be early May, to make a decision on whether or not you'd like to enroll. And when you receive your offer of admission, if you've applied an irregular decision to many institutions, you'll receive your offers at more or less the same time from a lot of different types of schools. You can compare the offers of financial aid, consider all of your options, and then make the best decision for you and your family at that time. Again, the point is every institution you're going to look at might have slightly different deadlines or slightly different application rounds. Do your research early on to figure out the types of rounds your schools in which you have interest, what they have to offer, and which one might be most advantageous or which one might make most sense given you and your family's circumstances. And then we're going to jump into the different parts of the application and how they might be and what an application might consist of. Before we do that, there is one point of distinction that we wanted to make. At some colleges and universities, when they evaluate an application, they'll use what's called an admission index. That's maybe a more narrow set of criteria where they're looking specifically at academic components like a GPA, perhaps the rigor of your classes, the number of classes you've taken, test scores, and that might be the bulk of what the application evaluation process is. Perhaps at institutions that are a little bit less selective, this might be more common, but that's the idea behind an admission index, if you've ever heard the term. Often at more selective or even highly selective institutions, though, the review will include not just an academic review of the student, but a holistic review, which means not only is the academic performance quite important in the selection process, but also the students' writing quality as evidenced by their essays, how they choose to involve themselves in the skill and achievement that they've had over time, their letters of recommendation, other personal characteristics about them. You'll learn more about holistic review as we go on, but there is a distinction in so much as not every college or university might practice either holistic review or an admission index in exactly the same way. You'll hear this over and over again. This is why doing research is your friend as you go through the process.
Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and talk about the academic pieces of an application, beginning with the transcript. So as you know, as you've been going through each grade of high school, you have been earning grades that are ultimately collected on a document that's called a transcript. This gives college readers and admissions folks data, and it tells folks what classes you have taken, what course selection might have been like for you at your school, and it also tells us what subjects you might be interested in or what subjects you might be challenging yourselves in. So on the slides you see there that it's telling us data on achievement and on the rigor of what's available to you. In addition to that, your counselors will be submitting what's called a school profile, and a school profile is somewhat of a fact sheet, report card of a school. So it'll give you demographics of a school size or where it might be located, what type of curriculum is offered there. Sometimes they'll offer extracurriculars that they are really good at doing and hosting at their schools. So a lot of really great information for people that might not be local to your school areas, for them to kind of understand what it is that you have been attempting to take in courses on a day-to-day basis, year-to-year basis. Lastly, we have letters of recommendation. So letters of recommendation, as you know, are written by your teachers, your counselors, folks that know you, and are speaking to your college readiness. So they are speaking to the qualities that you exhibit in the classroom, different types of strengths that they are speaking about. So these are also really important when you're thinking about curating your application. You want to think about people that you have developed a relationship with, and that can really speak to who you are and who you will be in college. So as you think about different schools, and Will was talking about the importance of doing your research, certain schools might ask for specific letters from specific teachers. They might have requirements as to how many letters of recommendation a school might be asking about. So be mindful of those instructions when you're thinking about applying to school. And then in addition to that, we have the testing aspect of applying to college. So SATs and ACTs are college entrance exams that are fairly common for some schools, but not all, which is why you see these terms here on the slide. So first, we have a school that might be test optional. And if a school is test optional, that means that they are deferring to the applicant and asking them to decide whether or not they would like to submit their test scores and have those test scores be considered and reviewed alongside everything else that you are already submitting. So that is up to the students. You can choose, right? And this is a conversation you can have with your counselors. Again, this is something you can look at with other schools and perhaps look at the ranges of a high performing or, something like that in a specific school. I would really recommend that. So that way you can make a more informed decision about whether or not to submit your score or not to test optional schools. The other side of that spectrum, so one side of the spectrum is going to be test blind or test free universities, and these are saying do not send your scores. We are absolutely blind to these metrics and we are not going to consider them, so you don't even have to worry about submitting them. So that is what test blind means. The other side of that spectrum are the schools that are going to require the test scores. So they absolutely require that piece of information in order to be considered in your application process. So the takeaway here is, again, you want to make sure that you are being mindful of what a school's testing policies are, and making sure that you are making an informed decision about your specific test scores if you are working with test optional schools and applying to those schools as well. And now I'll hand things off to Sergio.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So next up, what we have is what are you actually going to include when you are filling out your application? So all of your applications are going to ask you for your biographic information. So all of this will include your name, your age, sex, gender, pronouns, your geographic information. So where do you live, where you're located, your family information. So a lot of times these applications will have different indicators where you can indicate if you are a first generation student or if you are a legacy at that respective college or university. Down the road, this can help colleges and universities identify you when it comes to kind of helping you connect on campus with, different programs that they offer and different support systems. You'll also fill out what languages you speak or were spoken at home, so what you're familiar with, and then also high school information. So that includes the dates that you attended your high school, or if you've attended one or two different high schools, you'll include that information as well. And then your current courses. So when you are completing your application to your future institutions, make sure that you try to fill all of this out as best as you can, because this will definitely help you down the road when in admissions, we are looking over your application and just to make sure that you have everything correct. Just take your time when you're completing this section of your application. So activities list. So in this portion, the activities portion will capture your life outside of the classroom. You'll need to indicate an estimate on time and the involvement that you have in the description of your different activities. This can include anything from school affiliated activities such as clubs, associations, teams, newspapers, anything extracurricular that you did at your school. Within the community as well. So there will be an opportunity for most applications for you to be able to list any volunteer experience that you have, any outreach, charity, mentorship. If you were involved within your community, you're going to be able to highlight all of that within the community section. Professional. So a lot of students nowadays for quite some time have been able to take advantage of doing internships within their communities, any work experience that you have, any career development. You'll want to list all of that in that portion. Family responsibilities, so anything formal versus informal, both are important. So, for example, family responsibilities, if you work on the side and you have a part-time job to help your family, that's something that a lot of institutions will want to know. And then if if you babysit or do anything of that sort, we want to know all of that because we want a complete picture of the students that are applying to these colleges and universities. The honors distinctions, so this can include any academic achievements that you have, for example, like being on the honor roll, any athletic achievements. So if you've been awarded with any awards through your participation at your high school, please list those. Any academic competitions that you've been a part of, and any contests and awards that are related to any other activities that you do. Now, when you are completing your activities list, a lot of times a general rule of thumb that I tell students is that if you are involved within a certain activity, or if you are awarded an award and you use an acronym at your school, please make sure that you spell that acronym out, because when you are completing your application, maybe that acronym or that activity or that award is well known within your area, but some different colleges or universities might not know what that activity is or what that award is. So when you are completing your application, be as thorough as you can be. If you can kind of list what your activities, what those acronyms stand for, or what different awards stand for, please do so. And then one last tidbit on activities, and I'll talk a little bit about this later as well. For example, at the University of Alabama, your admissions application will also serve as your competitive scholarship application at the University of Alabama. So what I tell students, that when you're applying to the University of Alabama, when you are listing all of your activities, and later on when you're listing, and when you're answering any personal essays or anything of that sort, be as thorough as you can be. And this is the time where you brag about yourself like you've never bragged about yourself before. I know it might feel a little bit unnatural to do that, but when you are listing all of your activities, be as thorough as you can be, and have your two to three biggest supporters take a look at your activities list to make sure that you haven't missed anything. Next up, so a couple different components. We have essays and then supplemental components as well. Some universities will require one or the other, or a combination of both. For example, in essays, you have personal statements versus supplemental essays. These can differ. So in personal statements, you kind of just write a generalized personal statement about yourself that you can submit to different applications. The supplemental essays, those are a little bit different. So those will typically will have a prompt, and then you can write a little bit about purpose, and then just stylistic differences. And then in the supplemental components, what you will need to do is, typically these are just short answers and essay questions. You can also typically submit a portfolio or resume. Again, with these two, it can be similar, and some universities will require one or the other, or a combination of both. Again, as an example, at the University of Alabama, we don't require any essays through our application. So what we do is what we have is the supplemental components. So you'll list short answers, and then you'll be able to essentially kind of list what you would have on your resume in the supplemental component areas. So additional application factors that you really want to consider is demonstrated interest in school and major, your school and major selection when you are applying to different universities. So Different universities, for example, will take the demonstrated interest and will kind of see if you've visited campus, if you've had an opportunity to attend an event either in person or virtually, or if you've interacted with your regional recruiters. So a lot of different universities, they'll take that into consideration. So my best advice when applying to universities, before you even start your application, reach out to your regional recruiter, send them an email, kind of introducing yourself, saying, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm applying to the university. Just wanted to introduce myself. You'll want to take that into consideration. General rule of thumb, just go ahead and introduce yourself to your regional recruiter before you apply. That way, if that is a factor that that university takes into consideration, you've already done your part in introducing yourself. And whenever you have the opportunity to visit campuses, that also can speak volumes. So definitely, if that is something that you can do, please do so. And then another factor is that different schools and different universities might have different enrollment goals that they're trying to achieve. Where does this come into play? This comes into play when you are applying to a specific university and maybe you select a specific major and that major has a cap on the amount of students that they allow and are admitted into that specific field of study. So when you are applying, just be aware of that. For example, again, using the University of Alabama, at UA, most of our program students can, if you're admitted into the University of Alabama, you're automatically admitted into all of our programs. The two major programs that you're admitted into the lower divisions of schools are nursing and accounting in the College of Business. So at the university, when you're applying to, for example, nursing, you'll be admitted into the lower division of the nursing school once you complete your first 2 years in your prerequisites is when you would apply to the upper division. So things like that, different majors can be a little bit competitive. So make sure that you're taking that into consideration when you are applying.
Thank you, Sergio. All right, we're getting so many really good questions in the Q&A. Thank you all. I wanted to walk you through what an actual application looks like. Once you've filled it out, you've carefully gone through and filled out every section, you've done your activities section, you've done your essays, and you hit submit. What does it look like once it gets to us as admissions counselors? And I think this is a really, really important part of this session tonight, because a lot of students will hit submit and send that application out there and not really have a second thought of how the different pieces of the puzzle all fit together. And that's one of the best ways you can think about your college application is it's a puzzle. Every part that we've talked about so far with holistic review is another part of that puzzle. And it's our job as admissions counselors to put your puzzle back together and get the best picture of who you are as a person. So let's walk through how we put the puzzle together with all those different pieces that we've talked about. And you can think about how you're going to approach your college application process, your strategy for when it's time to fill that out. Because we have lots of questions about, oh, what does the activity section look like? That doesn't seem like a lot of space. Maximize the amount of space that you have with what you got. Okay, so we talked about the very quick biographical overview. This is what it looks like on our side. You're going to tell us a bit about where you live. You're going to tell us about your family. We ask for your parents' information, and then we also ask if you have any siblings. All of this is taken into consideration when we read an application just to get to know you better. Where are you coming from? In this section, when we look at the parents, you may see a student who has parents who have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, PhDs, but you may also see parents, like if your parent did not attend a four-year college or did not receive a degree. We call that a first-generation student, and it's something that we're looking for, that kind of context in a college application. One reason is because many of us have specific scholarships just for first-generation students. If you're the first in your family to attend college, that is amazing. That is awesome. We celebrate you, and we want to make sure that you are set up for success. So we have additional things like scholarships based off of what we're seeing in this part of the application. So that's why we want to mention it. That's why we want to talk about it. The other thing I want to talk about right here, I don't know if you can see my little mouse, but I'm circling around the common application fee waiver. That is something that if you need a fee waiver to cover the cost of applying to college, because applying to college can be expensive. Each one of those applications costs $30, $40, $50, $75 sometimes. If that is a barrier for you to apply to the number of schools or the schools that you want to apply to, you can apply for something called a fee waiver. Often you can reach out directly to an admissions office, or you can use your counselor to help you get those fee waivers. There are a couple of different ways to do it. But by submitting a fee waiver, that means you don't have to pay to submit that application. I'm going to throw this out there because we like to use our institution as examples. So for the University of Chicago, if you are applying for need-based aid and you check the box that says, I want to apply for aid, we automatically waive your application fee no matter what. So you don't need to apply for a fee waiver for us. We just waive the fee anyways. So things to keep in mind, like we said, doing your research, getting organized, all going to be really important parts of your college application process. Okay, these are the next few pages. So we get your current education, where are you located? And if you've attended multiple high schools, that is also going to show up here. If you also did, let's say, dual enrollment, sometimes that'll show up here. So we'll see all the places that you have been learning throughout your high school years. Again, we mentioned you need to list your current curriculum or upcoming curriculum. That's right here. That does not live in a vacuum, but it helps us understand a little bit more, okay, what are you currently in? All right, that's helping me get a good idea of your level of math, especially looking at this student, but it doesn't give me the whole picture. I get a better picture when I look at that high school profile and your actual transcript. But this is like a preview as I'm going through your application, and a little preview of what you think you might want to do with your college degree. So this student wants to go on and do another degree. They want to keep going and they want to get that master's in data analysis. Then there's one very small page that includes any testing that you submitted. If that school is test blind or test free, you will see this will be completely blank. There will be nothing on that page. If that school is test optional, all we're going to see there is what you want us to see. So what you submitted. If you chose not to submit testing, it stays blank. If you chose to submit testing, we will see it. There's almost always going to be a question, especially when we're looking at a test optional school. Do you want to submit testing or not? So that on our end determines whether or not we see your scores. And it also gives you the flexibility to apply test optional to some schools, or not submit testing to some schools and submit testing to other schools. So you tailor that to the school that you're applying to. Same thing, you'll see APs, you'll see IB scores on here. Any additional testing that you've taken will also end up on here. You'll also see, this is a very good example of something that we called super scoring. So as you can see, this student sat for at least 2 different tests. It says they took 2 tests. One was in January and June. One was in June. So we took, when we were super scoring, we took their highest subsections from each time they sat through the test, and we put it together into their highest overall score. So that's what the super scoring idea is if you set it for multiple times, that school will take your highest subsections into your highest overall. Then this is the activity section that we were talking about. Lots of questions about the activity section. You are going to fill out how long you've been involved in this activity, how many hours per week you've been involved, how many weeks per year, and whether this was a school year. So if this was like a school club, or if it's a summer activity, this will say summer. Or if it's all year round, it's summer and academic year, it'll say all year. So we'll see all those different differentiations. You do have, this student did not use all of their space for all of their activity descriptions. Do not stress too much about activity descriptions. It's just for us to get a better idea of how involved you were, what you were doing. So as we go through this application, you can decide in your mind too, and let us know in the Q&A, Do you like what the student did? Do you wish that they had done something different? Is there information you wish you had when you were looking at this application? Because that's what you can start thinking about putting in your application. Say, oh, I don't want to leave them having any question marks. I want them to know exactly what I was talking about. Someone had a really good question about what order you put things in this activity list. What this student has done is pretty much what I would suggest, which is put the biggest, most time intensive, the biggest activities that they've been involved in, the most important to them, and the thing that they have been the most involved in goes up top. And then as we go down, we get a little lighter in our involvement. This is just 1 hour a week. This is just 1 hour a week. So yeah, put your big stuff up front, and then you can put the smaller stuff at the bottom. All right, moving on to the essay. So both of the common application and the coalition application, and honestly, most institutional applications that you are going to fill out are going to ask you for some sort of personal statement or personal essay. The idea behind this is that it is your story in your voice. So this student wrote about their love of politics and data analysis. So we already know this student kind of wants to go into data analysis. We already know they're doing really well in math because we saw they're in multivariable calculus. So this is a great little personal statement about how they want to combine all of these different things in their next step in their life. The next page after that, this will show us if you have had to transfer schools at any point, or you've attended multiple schools, or if you had to take some time off and came back to school, if you took a gap year, all of that shows up in this page. This student didn't need to fill any of this out, but also if you have a disciplinary infraction, please do let us know. That is not an automatic red flag at all. Just want to let you know that. And you can explain anything about that disciplinary infraction. What is really important is owning it and growing from it. I think that is the most important part of reporting any sort of disciplinary infraction. Mistakes happen. We are all human, but how did you grow, and are you going to own your mistakes? All really important pieces. Because again, you're going to come to our college and you have to be that independent human being who needs to be able to navigate a very complicated world. If you are ready to own your mistakes, then that shows us one step towards being ready for college and being that independent person who needs to navigate a complicated world. All right, so I made this very small. I realize probably on your screens. This is generally the idea behind the high school profile and the transcript. They come to us in a packet. So when we get that high school profile, we also get the transcript and the counselor letter of recommendation at the same time in that packet to give us better context about you. I think I made it probably too small for anyone to see, but we read through the whole transcript. We want to see your growth over time. We want to see the curriculum, the classes that you've taken. And you can see this student has some really good growth over time in terms of the rigor that they've added, as well as their grades are gradually getting better and better. So they're getting their groove is basically what I would call that. So they're really growing over time. The GPA also, you can kind of see the GPA grow, and the hours of community service grow for the student too. Again, profile helps us understand more about what's available at your high school and what you took advantage of. As you can see from here, most high school profiles are going to give us kind of an idea of what rigor is available at your high school. That might be AP, it might be IB curriculum, it might be ACE, it might be dual enrollment, it might be honors classes, depends on your school. This one kind of gives us a good idea. These are the AP classes, and then I'm able to go back and look at this student's transcript and go, wow, this student has really challenged themselves. They've taken a lot of what's available to them in terms of rigor. And as the years have gone by, they've gotten better and better. So we call that an upward trend. You want to see an upward trend. You don't really want to see the downward trend, which is where senior year rolls around, you're taking 7 art classes and you're failing half of them. Don't recommend. We do want to see the upward trend. We want to see that you are continuing to challenge yourself even into your senior year and beyond, because that's going to make that transition from high school to college so much easier for you. It's not about, none of this is about racking up the APs and the GPA points and playing the game. It's about what's going to make your life easier transitioning from high school to college. It's going to be continuing to challenge yourself with that rigorous curriculum so that you can hit the ground running your first year of college. All right. Then very blurry perhaps, but you don't need to read all of the details. These are the ideas of what your recommendations might look like. So this first one, the longer one, is the recommendation from that student's counselor. It gives us the big picture, the floodlight is a good way to think of it, of how the student is doing within their high school. It also does a really good job of giving us more context. So now I have the story behind what I saw in Alan's transcript, which was things started out a little rough, and then as he went on, his grades got better. This recommendation tells me why that was the case. So it helps me understand his growth over time, and is a very, very positive recommendation. Then I have two more recommendations. These are from Alan's teachers. Someone had a question about whether or not it's okay to submit 3 letters of recommendation. The answer is it really depends on the school. I'll use UChicago as an example. We asked for 2 teacher recommendations, but students do have the opportunity to submit 1 supplemental letter of recommendation. That doesn't have to be from a teacher. It can be from like a coach, boss, pastor, priest, rabbi. It can be from anyone who's an adult mentor in your life. That's not something every single school needs or wants in their application process. So just staying organized, keeping a spreadsheet, figuring out what each school accepts is going to be very, very helpful. But this one he's got a recommendation from his math teacher, and he's got a recommendation from his global politics teacher. Again, this student really wants to do that combination of politics and data analysis. They talked about it in their personal statement. They chose these 2 teachers, hopefully because he has a really good relationship with them. He's been really involved in their classes, things like that. Okay, I want to leave some time for questions at the end. So to recap, it's really important now, no matter where you are in your college search process, especially if you are that junior or younger. So if you are looking at planning out your courses over the next few years, sit down with your counselor and think about what sorts of courses will align with your goals. If your goal is data analysis, like Alan here, we do want to see you taking some pretty rigorous math classes because you're going to go into math. If those rigorous math classes aren't available, you can think about things like dual enrollment or schoolhouse.world and Khan Academy. You have other options and opportunities. So we want to think about setting you up for success once the college application time rolls around. But doing that means starting earlier. So 9th, 10th grade is a great time to start having these conversations. Get involved in different activities that are meaningful for you. That is part of the activities list. Again, it's not just checking boxes. It's about what are you passionate about? Where do you spend your time? We want to see that you're not only a good classmate, that you're going to be involved inside the classroom, but that also that you're going to be a good community member on our campus. You're going to be involved outside the classroom. Figure out what kind of application, what's your strategy? Do you want to apply early decision or early action to some schools? Do you want to wait for other schools for regular decision? If you are thinking about an early action or early decision deadline, that's in November. That's coming up real quick. So you want to start planning out your applications. If you are a junior right now, highly recommend you get as much of this application done before senior year starts. So you can do your essays, you can start filling stuff out this summer before senior year starts. Some of my schools that I work with actually require their juniors to ask for 1 letter of recommendation before they go on summer break, so that when you come back senior year, you've already got 1 letter of recommendation in your pocket. If that school only needs 1, you're good. If that school needs 2, you just need to find 1 more. So doing all this as early as possible is basically what all the rest of these say. Start early, start early, start early. And check for fee waivers. So start asking about fee waivers if you think that's something that you might need, or ask about a school's specific policies so that you can get those fee waivers if that's something that you need. I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to moderate our Q&A at the very end here. But we're going to take a look at the questions that we've been seeing. I do have a few that I saw really early on that I wanted to address first.
Yeah, you flagged some great ones, Margie.
I
So to
did.
round out, like Margie mentioned, get some good questions out there. So one that I saw that was flagged was, is it our home address or our high school address that is considered rural? I'm in an area with both.
I will take this one just because this is a conversation we've had a lot at STARS. It's both. So home address and high school are both kind of taken into consideration. If you're in an area with both, you are double good, you are double done. But for some students, you might live in a more rural area and have to commute a really long ways to get to high school. Don't worry, we're still taking that into consideration. Two of these kind of work together as well. Someone's asking about like, how do you know if I'm rural? So one of it is like, we see it in your application, that biographical information, your home address, your school, like there are different flags that'll pop up. For us, we'll say, oh, that looks rural. The other thing that you can do is write about your lived experiences. If being a rural or small town student is important to your identity, you'll probably include that in your personal statement, because your personal statement's about you. It's personal. It's your story and your voice. So feel free to include that sort of information in your application if it's relevant to you.
That was a great response, because I was going to ask, someone else had mentioned, do you recommend students mention that they are a small town rural student in their supplemental essays and how it has impacted them? So absolutely, to echo Margie's excellent response. Next, I see one regarding testing. Do you feel that SAT, ACT score ranges of accepted students are inflated since the inception of test optional policies? Are only those students with exceptionally high scores submitting?
I will happily take this one too, Will, unless you want to. Let's both do it. So I'll do it first. I think absolutely. It is 100% inflated. We see this at the University of Chicago. We've been test optional since 2018. And we have seen it bump up and up and up each year, because a lot of students who do submit testing do submit phenomenal testing, right? Really strong testing. That does not mean that you are not a competitive applicant if you don't have like a perfect test score. So something that we are piloting this year at UChicago, and you'll see it at a couple other schools, is called the no harm testing policy. It means that we are test optional and you can choose to submit your testing or not. If your testing is not as strong as your transcript and our concordance, then we won't consider your testing at all. We'll turn you to test optional, and we'll only consider your transcript in your review process. So if your testing helps you, if it's as strong as your transcript or stronger, we'll take it into consideration as a piece of the academic puzzle. But if it's not, we'll just drop it. So that is meant to combat some of that creep that we're seeing in inflation, because you are a perfectly competitive and strong applicant, even if your test score is not a 35 or 36. So something to keep in mind. Think about where you land near that middle 50%. It doesn't have to be in the middle 50% to still be competitive in a test optional world.
Fabulous. Will, did you want to chime in?
No, Margie hit the points that I was going
Yeah.
to hit. So
Excellent.
well done,
Comprehensive.
Margie.
Next question. Do you know how colleges generally view our answers to the "Are you involved with any community organizations?" question? Is it seen as an additional extracurricular or honor, used for demographic info, or not really considered?
I'll start with this one, and I'll say it's certainly considered, or else we wouldn't ask the question. And so that might seem obvious, but honestly, questions are asked on applications because the reader is trained to potentially use that information in an evaluation process. So we wouldn't ask for it if there isn't some valuable information that might be useful. I think the answer to that question, is it going to be used to think about contextualizing your circumstances, or about think about it as an extracurricular. That will depend a little bit on the nature of the activity and your description of it, but it can help give us a fuller picture of a lot of things. Let's say you're involved with a community-based organization, a nonprofit that provides academic enrichment, and you have to spend every Saturday morning or 1 or 2 weeknights working with that organization. That will give us a broader sense of your commitments and your involvements beyond that which you've listed, for example, on your activities section. It might also give us more evidence for or information about your preparation for the college or university academically. So there are a lot of different ways in which the information that you share can be used in a holistic process. Exactly how is going to depend a little bit on the organization and what you've been doing with it.
Fantastic. I see a question, I guess, kind of delving a little bit deeper into that response. When writing personal essays, is it possible to give too much information, or is it something we don't have to worry too much about?
I will pop in and say, yes, it is absolutely possible to give too much information. This is why I think Melissa, someone gave really good advice that was like, have other people take a look at your application. It is really helpful to have those outside eyeballs take a look at your application and make sure that, first of all, you've included everything, and second of all, it is appropriate. I cannot tell you how many times. So back in the day, Common App used to have an essay prompt that said, where are you most comfortable? And I cannot tell you how many essays I read about the bathroom, the toilet specifically that year. That if anyone else had taken a look at those students' applications, I promise they would not have submitted that. But yes, there is such a thing as too much information. I do a whole essay writing workshop where I sometimes talk about like some pet peeves for admissions counselors. It's bathroom humor, it's throwing around some 4-letter words you shouldn't be using, and it's talking about your significant other. We don't really want to hear about your boyfriend or girlfriend. I think that's lovely for you, but like at the end of the day, it's not something we always want to hear about. So yeah, I think having some eyeballs look at your application, make sure everyth's okay. Don't let people edit your voice out of it though. I think that's important that you have people take a look at it, but your voice, your personality is what we are looking for. So don't make it so bland that you don't come through anymore and your voice isn't there. I think there's a nice fine line to walk there.
Excellent. Regarding letters of recommendation, would you say that letters of recommendation from core class teachers are better than teachers from elective classes?
Yes, at least in the Amherst case, for sure. We actually require that they come from 2 teachers of core academic subjects. And part of the reason for that is that often we're trying to get a sense, for example, of your analytical thinking abilities or of how you perform in an academic classroom, because we're going to offer similar classes as the core academic classes that are being offered in your high school. So hearing what a teacher of one of those courses has to say is a good barometer for us thinking about how you might perform in a college classroom. It's not to say that elective classes don't matter. It's just that often a core teacher is going to be one that's required and also one that's going to be particularly helpful for an evaluation process.
Yeah, and I can echo that as well. Similarly to Amherst, Caltech has specific courses in which we ask for letters of recommendation. So for certain humanities subjects and certain STEM subjects. So once again, do your homework as to what a school is asking for so you can make sure you're fulfilling those requirements. I know we have another slide, Margie. I don't know if you want to round things out. I can keep going with questions. I'm happy to keep going with questions.
Yes. So if you guys have any additional questions or anything, please feel free to check out the website. If you found this webinar, you probably found the website at some point. That is great. You will continue to get emails from us. We'll send you updates about things that are happening. And I have a lot of questions kind of that I see that I want to wrap up real quick in terms of the question about testing and super scores, individuals, everything like that. The answer is it really depends on the school. So we're trying to give you the broadest information possible. But when it comes to like letters of recommendation coming from specific teachers, or should I submit my super score versus all of my individual scores? It's absolutely going to depend on the school. So from school to school, those policies will vary wildly. Some schools are going to ask you to submit every test score you ever sat for. Some just want to see your super score. Some are going to require you to submit those scores if you want to be considered for merit scholarships. Some aren't. So it really, really depends on the school doing that research. One of the great things about the Stars College Network, though, is that all 32 of these colleges and universities have a point person. They have a person who is here to help answer those questions for you as rural and small town students. And that we're pretty much at time. So if you have anything that you didn't feel like got answered today, or you want to start reaching out to those individual schools, check out the website. Good place to start. And this will be posted on the YouTube channel in the next week or two. So you'll see it on there as follow-up. But thank you all for joining us again tonight. Thank you to the panelists who joined us tonight too. You took your Tuesday evening and hung out at work, which we really appreciate. But yeah, thank you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.